here is how deadly and how strong fentanyl is. And I think what we need to take away from this is, obviously you need to show this to as many people as you can, especially young adults, and tell them that, you know, we make mistakes, but one mistake is fatal, and this is such a strong drug. Through the legislature, we need to not only have more education, but we need to have more recovery facilities. We need to pass more legislation to help individuals, you know, get the message out that this is deadly, and it's heart-wrenching. I mean, you know, as a father of four, as a prosecutor, I see what happens, and it's your worst nightmare. And my heart goes out to everyone in this room who's lost someone. I mean, my nephew was overdosed twice, fortunately, with Narcan. He was revived, but he was one of the lucky ones. And you don't think it happened to your family, but it happens to everyone. And so, you know, we need to make it our mission, you know, to educate and to pass information on it. You know, even if you try once, it'll be dead. I just think this is such an incredibly powerful film. It's very emotional. I think that it really sends the message, and we need to disseminate that as much as possible.
I echo what Senator Bateman just said. It's an extremely powerful film. I doubt that there's anyone in this room that this doesn't touch. I know Senator Bateman mentioned someone in his family. I lost a cousin years ago to opioid overdose. No one's immune. It doesn't care what your economic level is. It doesn't care what your education level is. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about your race. Okay. It's just, it's devastating, and it's really a difficult problem to deal with. I know at the prosecutor's office, Prosecutor Kearns before me, a lot of people think the prosecutor's office just puts bad guys in jail, and there's so much more to it. We spend a lot of our time now doing outreach. We're involved in drug recovery court, which we prefer to call it. We participate in different programs like Operation Helping Hand that some of you may have heard of, that we work with our partners, including Prevention Resources and many other people, to take someone who may be an addict as a drug issue and try to get them treatment, try to offer them options in what they're doing now. It doesn't do them any good to sit in a jail cell, but maybe if we can get them treatment, that could be helpful. So I think this film, as difficult as it is to watch, it's just that important that people see it.
Thank you. I too echo Prosecutor Williams and Senator Bateman. My heart does go out to all the family members who have lost loved ones, and to just say thank you for sharing your story. Such an important story, because I think sometimes we can really live in our own little bubbles and think that this can't happen to us. But you make it, your stories make it very real to everyone. And this film is so very important. The one young man said, someone might choose to start taking an opiate, but shortly thereafter, the choice is no longer there. And I think that should diminish the stigma of addiction. And we have that in our culture, I understand, but I think as more and more people begin to understand the nature of addiction and the physiological effects of addiction, that really it's not about willpower. And so this film making people aware that how dangerous it is. The film stressed over and over and over again, you don't know what's in that drug. I think that can have a profound effect on our young people. That's certainly my hope. But I also think it's very important for us as legislators, prosecutors, law enforcement, prevention resources, educators, that we also key and tune into what addiction is all about. If you think about, just in the opiate world, that it's all derivatives of morphine. And morphine was created for a reason, right? In the Civil War, soldiers were given morphine to take away the pain. And I think a lot of people in our culture today are in a lot of pain. They're lonely. We're more connected because of our social media than ever before, but I think our young people are less connected than ever before. You know, they watch what's going on around them, and they think that they're not part of, that they're missing something, that they're less than, and it's painful. And this opiate provides a panacea. It takes away that pain. And so we need to recognize that, and I think we need to key into that. So the awareness and also the psychological, emotional factors need to be addressed as well.
One of the questions we'll come back to is how strong stigma is and what we can do to destigmatize the disease of addiction. Dina, you lost your son Dylan. Alyssa, you lost your brother Jesse. And we thank you for the courage to be here. And I'd like to just ask if there's anything else you would like to add about your loved one that maybe, put a personal voice to it.
My son was a wise guy. Like, everybody loved him. His parole officer loved him very, very much. She enjoyed his visits. His teachers loved him. People in rehab loved him. And I think part of who he was also part of the reason he avoided getting help he needed. He could talk himself out of anything, and he would avoid doing the work that was required of him to deal with the reasons he was using. You can't just go to rehab and go to rehab and go to rehab and not work at the root of why he's using. He had felonies. He was living in a sober house where there was no mass transit for him to go to work. The kind of jobs that he was able to get were at call centers, which he felt was below him because he was college educated. He just sank into a deep depression, and actually the day before he overdosed, the day after rather, I was planning to go get him and bring him back home to come up with another plan, because I saw that he was just down spiraling. And this is something I've talked to many people about, is that, when you're in your addiction, there's no hope. He did not have hope. He gave up on hope. He did not see a future for himself. He wanted a future, but he didn't know how to get there. And it was easier to use, and the last time he did it, it killed him.
Hi. I guess what I'd like to add about my brother is, as everybody was talking about, I also teach high school, so I have a little bit of insight into young people. And I think really strongly that they all believe that something like this wouldn't happen to them. And I know for sure that my brother thought the same. He graduated from college and had a full-time job and lived on his own, and kind of to piggyback off of that, he could kind of talk his way out of anything, and we didn't really know the extent of his problem, and I don't think that he knew the extent of it either. And because of the stigma, he didn't want to tell anyone that he had a problem. I mean, his best friends didn't know, we didn't really know too much. And ultimately it ended in him dying, and he didn't want that to happen. He wasn't like at the end of his road at all. He had just started a new job in a new place, and he was really excited about it, and he was really excited about his life and everything that was coming up for him. And if he knew that there was fentanyl in the drugs that he bought that day, he never would have bought them. I think he was just trying to have fun. He didn't think there was a problem. So I think it's important for people to know that that it can happen to you, and you might think that you're just partying or having fun, and it just takes one time and you can be dead. And I just want to say that I love my brother so much, and I'm happy that I found the courage now to do this for him, because I didn't have enough courage to talk to him about what he was going through while he was here.
You have courage. We all believe that. You believe that yourself. And what helps us cope with loss is hope, right? And Sean is in recovery. How long are you celebrating recovery, Sean?
Over 8.5 years.
I know it's a big question to ask in a short amount of time, but if you could just highlight for us what put you on that path to sustain recovery?
You know, first being able to put the drugs down was something that I didn't think that was possible. Because like what was said, we do get caught up. Even when I didn't want to use anymore, and my father would call me things as a cut up. My mom would say things as, why can't you just stop? My coaches would be looking at me because I was a college athlete, like, dude, just stop what you're doing. And if it was that easy, I would have. I really would have. What was super important for me, being able to become abstinent but not having recovery, was to see the light in somebody else, that it was appealing to me. I saw the shine on the person's face in those anonymous meetings who I ended up asking to be my sponsor, and I wanted that. I had lost a part of myself, you know, and I really wanted it back, and I didn't know how to get there. But the moment I saw it in somebody else, and that they were willing to show me the way to get it, and all I had to do was change one thing, which for me was my mindset. See, I was super negative. I was pessimistic, and I was producing results in my life that I did not want, unconsciously, based on the things that I was doing, the drugs I was putting in my system, you know, the brain chemical changes, not knowing that once you put the drugs down, things don't just go back to normal. It takes time, it takes work, it takes effort, you know, and I was willing to do that. So when I changed that mindset, I became more positive. I started thinking of myself in a different light. And that was something that really, really lit a fire in me. When I was able to share my story and not be ashamed of it. And then people would be coming up to me saying, wow, that I can relate, that really helped me. That made me want to keep going. And watching this film it hurt. Because though I did not know the people in this film, I had a groomsman that passed away from fentanyl. I've been to plenty of funerals of my friends, and it hurts, and it really does. And I've dedicated my life, and I say it like this: I want to aspire to inspire until I expire, and I can only do that one day at a time. You know, one day.
We can see, feel, and hear the fire, and that's amazing. So I'm going to ask a couple questions that are just more to inform everybody. So try and keep the answers to 30 seconds to a minute, because we really do want to get to questions from the audience. Mike, what has your office been seeing recently with substances in the community? Any big changes?
I wouldn't say big changes recently, but over the years. This year we've already had, it's not even the end of January, we've already had 3 overdoses. Thankfully, none of them were fatal. But in the last 4 or 5 years, each year, we've seen 45 to 60 overdoses a year. Sometimes up to 17 people deceased. Those are very sobering numbers. Sadly, I don't see the numbers going down on our drug cases. We do have a very active recovery court. Drug court is what the court system calls it, where we divert individuals who are willing to and are eligible into treatment programs, and instead of putting them in jail. So that is something that we're very involved in. There's the Operation Helping Hand that I mentioned. Every single county in New Jersey has such a program. And just this past year, last year I believe the Attorney General afforded $1 million for prosecutors' offices to use throughout the state. This year, General Graywall doubled that to $2 million. So funding, as I'm sure Senator Bateman can attest to, is prosecutor Kearns as well, is critical. we are getting.
Kit, that's a good lead into the next question for you. Is there any new legislation on the horizon that's been proposed in the prevention of substance use?
Well, more funding has been proposed, and the governor talked about it. Obviously, it comes down to resources and our priorities. And there are bills in the hopper, as you know. We just started a new legislative session, so a lot of bills were reintroduced, and we really haven't met much since the day to state. Actually, we're going down tomorrow, but it's environmental convening. But there are some programs to increase the funding for the peer recovery coaches and for additional recovery centers, additional beds, but it's never enough. And as you know, we expanded the drug court a few years ago, which has helped somewhat, but there's never enough resources, but it's prioritized, and we have to prioritize our funding.
I'd like to come back and talk about the need for recovery support services, so we'll come back to that. Tony, can you give us, in your view, you do a lot of work with parents and you have a mental health background as well as law enforcement, what top one or two things you would really say to parents to look for, what they could do to recognize and prevent it in our family?
I think the number one thing to key in on is you know your child, and if that behavior begins to change, you need to begin to ask why. And listen, I have 4 kids, and I'm not talking about the normal stuff. I have 2 boys now. I got 2 girls, and now I'm beginning to understand that we are not all the same. But if they're making dramatic changes in terms of friends, sleeping, staying up, the way they look, their eyes, their behaviors, that's probably the number one thing to key in on. And the best way to notice that, by the way, is to engage, right? Engage with them, talk with them, sit down with them, and try to encourage them to put that stupid phone down, and you put the stupid phone down yourself and talk and see what's going on.
I like that, put the stupid phone down. That was very elegant. I like that. We all think the same thing, right? So Dina, Alyssa, Sean, I'd ask you all to think about this. What is your hope for the community to hear from you to prevent this from happening to someone else or to another family? Do you want to go first?
I think that this video, watching this today, it had a huge effect on me today, and I've seen a couple of edits of it prior, and I still was crying. And I think that even though I knew somebody that was being talked about in the film, I think that it could have been very effective on anyone of any age, even if you didn't know somebody who was struggling. So I think that just getting this message out that it's not something to be ashamed of and we need to talk about it is something that can help start to prevent it and change the way people think. It can happen to anyone, like we said, and I think that more people need to be aware of that.
I feel like the belief system of people that suffer from the disease of addiction need to be supplemented with something else once they know recovery is possible. Because if you are like me, if they are like me, which a lot of the times they are, you're doomed almost by your past experiences and behaviors, that stigma that just, well, even if I stop using, people still look at me in this light. And what I try to promote is, we are not who we were, but we can now be who we were always intended to be. And I like to say, we are not who we were, but we can become who we are were always intended to be. And in recovery, what you get is the ability to live 2 lives in one lifetime, but resources have to be made available. Like, for example, I started in a recovery house, and I got to a point where I was able to start recovery houses. We have 4 sober living homes, Phoenix Recovery. We add a clinical aspect to that, which means, so it's one thing to supply somewhere safe for individuals to live and monitor them with drug testing and have a schedule for them to implement to change their life. But How about something to amend the broken soul, the broken person that they were, that become from the disease of addiction? That's what we do in our houses. We do self-reflection work to increase more reasoning, to become more positive, think about ourselves and our past situation in a different light. So if more resources become available, if people had somewhere to go after anonymous meetings, they kick us out. Like, we need places where we can hang out and congregate and not be ashamed.
It's a real passion for all of us with prevention resources. We started a part-time recovery center 2 nights a week, and we're serving over, I think, 2,000 people a year, 2 nights a week. We had 30 people on a Saturday night. We did that as a grassroots movement. We have no state funding, just private funding. And we hear time and again that if it weren't for that recovery center, I don't know if I would have made it. So, there you go.
It becomes tough to, I'm sorry to take up time, but it becomes tough to break
Does anybody
the,
mind?
it becomes tough to break the stigma when we follow the law, especially in our recovery houses. We have the cooperative sober living residence license, and I'll leave the name out of the town. I got a call from a gentleman. He said, "I know what you're doing, I know the license you have, but I'm still willing to go to bat and try to take you guys down." And meanwhile, we're providing a service to help the community. People are coming out of treatment centers or out of detoxes, trying to reinvent themselves and start their lives over, but the stigma is still real. And that's what we have to try to break through education, through resources.
So the whole, don't speak about stigma yet. That's going to be my last question before we said, no, it's great. Because I'm going to ask each of you to just try to come up with a very succinct, what can we do to break stigma? Now, we can't lecture everyone. I think I want to hear from you as well. But Dina, I want to hear from you too.
For me, I believe that we as family members of those who are suffering an addiction not hide. I was very outspoken. I'm obviously very outspoken. And I'm very passionate about this. And I was going to rehab 6 months after my son died. I went into a few different rehabs and shared his story. And I will continue to share my son's story because his life mattered. Every person who is using, their life matters. Every child that we have lost, their life matters. Living in the shame of, oh, my child, my son's father never told his family that Dylan had a problem. And when they got the phone call to come say goodbye to their nephew, it was shocking. It was shocking. Like, I still feel terrible to this day that they had to come to the hospital to see my son like that and not know what was going on. And so for me, it's very important to speak your truth, because honor that person, honor your child. There's no reason to be ashamed of them. They are still your child, your loved one. And so if we keep out of hiding, then we start ending that shame, and support them. And I'm gonna keep going because I feel like, what I found with my son trying to get into rehabs is that he would tell me he would have to be dirty or he couldn't get in, and insurance wouldn't pay. And I was just like, I can't believe that's true. And it is true. And I don't know if it is to this day, but for my son to have to go out and use so insurance will pay for him to go to rehab is disgusting. And so those kind of things have to change. We should be able to go, if anybody should be able to go to rehab, dirty Pete or not.
That's right. So I'm going to ask the question about stigma. What can each of us in this room do to destigmatize it? Because I think you kind of talked about it, about coming out of the shadows.
Yeah.
But I'm just amazed on a daily basis in the business community. I'll be talking about it, and I still hear educated people just saying, "Oh, well, that's their choice." They made that choice. Do you all agree that that's very prevalent, unfortunately? So but we all have a voice, and when I hear that I talk, I try to educate. I'm direct, and that's something we can do. But I'd like to hear from each of you. What can we do as individuals and in our networks of business and friends and family to work to destigmatize it? Because that is a big, big barrier.
I have to say, like, as a mother of a child who lost her child, it's somewhat difficult because you're trying to educate people who are ignorant. You know, and so you're trying to break through ignorance, well, he's just a junkie, like his life doesn't matter. And so like, where do you go with that? There's no conversation that you can have. I have bumper stickers on my car, and I was at a client's house and her husband came out and he was like, why do you have that in your car? They should just let them die. I mean, he didn't know what happened to my son, and I was just like, so we're done here, you know, because, so it's speaking, you know, it's just getting the message out to those who are open to hearing the story and your story.
I think you're interested.
Well, I think more, what Dina said, we need to educate individuals that it really is a chronic brain disease, like many other diseases.
Yeah.
And while they're suffering, they need to get the respect and the encouragement to continue their treatment. And that, you know, because it's not cancer, but it's a disease. It really, we need to educate the public that, because most people in this room have been touched, you know, tragically, or somebody they've known.
One in four of us,
son.
they say, right? Directly or indirectly.
Yeah, and so I think it's our responsibility to really change societal attitudes on how we treat individuals with this disease. And, you know, I think the legislature has an important role in doing that and educating it. I know October 6th of every year we're designated to kick opioids out. And, you know, we need to disseminate this film to as many schools and many organizations as possible, because it really hits home. And you know what? We have a responsibility to help others who have these diseases.
Anybody else on the panel like to speak to what we can do to destigmatize?
Just a couple things. It's kind of an echo of what other people have already said, but I think you really need to look at substance use disorder as a disease. And what do we do with people that have diseases? We give them treatment. That's what you do. That's what we're supposed to do. And the last thing is kind of more of a general statement, but echoing what Senator Bateman and some other people have said, education, reduce that stigma that, you know, someone's an addict. Change your language. You know, their substance use. I think that's so important. And you know, speaking of education, that's what this is. That's what this event is today with all of you. Education.
Yeah, so I think we start with the premise that, you know, to be human is really to be broken. We all, not one of us is whole. We're all trying to get there, but we all have our struggles, our difficulties, our weaknesses, and we have our strengths and our good things as well. But I think someone that might say, as you said, Dina, why do that? Let them die. Certainly is ignorant, but I think it's fear-based. I really do. I think they're afraid of being out of control. They're afraid of this whole idea that they can keep it at arm's length or further. That's what that stigma is about. And I think that we in the know that understand the disease model of addiction and understand that is a struggle that person has, and I have my own struggles, and you have your own struggles, and that's what it is. And we're going to help each other through those struggles. And I think that's the way we need to start weaving it together.
Alyssa and Sean, I'd like to hear from you before you open it to some questions.
I definitely strongly agree with what everybody else is saying. Change our language. And I also want to say that I'm really here because this happened to somebody that I loved. Prior to that, I didn't know what fentanyl was. I didn't really know anyone who was a user at that point. I knew of people, but so there are those people that say, I won't even repeat it because I can't, but there are other people who just don't know anything, I think, and I think those people can be reached and those people can be spoken to and educated, because maybe they don't have a closed mind, they just don't know anything about it. And I think if we can reach more of those people and they can change their mindset, then maybe we can carry the rest of them along with us, hopefully.
There's something to be said for that ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Sean?
I feel like when there is the stigma of an addict, it can push that person who is struggling further from wanting to better themselves. What's the point? I'm just going to be viewed as such anyway. You know, so when I refer to myself, I don't call myself, I'm Sean, I'm an addict. When I'm in meetings, I'm Sean, I'm a recovering addict. I call into my life what is, right? You know, from my vantage point, it may be a little bit different, but you guys have heard of the 12-step meetings that people are referred to go to. They're anonymous fellowships. From my vantage point, there needs to be more people that are in the I am not anonymous movement to be willing to share their story and their successes after addiction. Because I know the time is a factor, but listen, I failed out of school with a 0.03 GPA. Yeah, I said 0.03 GPA. You know, I had to ask to go back to school with a year clean. I graduated with an associate's with a 3.03. I went back to Georgia Court University, did a 3.6. I am not the same person. I said, why not entrepreneurship? I started a business that's recovery-based that helps recovering addicts. I was able to get married, start a family. Like, I'm not that same person. People need to know that recovery is available, recovery is an option, and that people need to make it seem appealing so that they want to do it.